We're back. This is Ranger Russ at the Meigs Point Nature Center, and we're back in our water room. So this is the idea behind this room is it's underwater in Long Island Sound. So if you've ever been to the Nature Center, you know, we've got a boat overhead, and let's show you the boat. There's a boat up there, okay? So this is like being underwater in Long Island Sound. And now I've knocked the camera off. So today's animal is an animal that you're going to find in Long Island Sound. And many of you have probably encountered this animal, mostly on our rocky shore. But when it first came into Connecticut, it was found on the sandy beach. It was in the salt marsh. It was everywhere. Now I say when it first came here, this is not a native species to Connecticut. This is an invasive species. So there's another vocabulary word for everybody. An invasive species, there's two requirements to be invasive. The first is that it is not native to the area where it's now found. And in this case, it's not native to Long Island Sound. The second thing is that it's harmful to the environment. So we're talking about an Asian shore crab today. The Asian shore crab is originally from Asia. It spread across Asia. It actually spread, it's an invasive species in Japan. It was originally only found on the Asian shore. It's all over the West Coast, and now it's all over the East Coast of the US, from Canada all the way to Mexico. It's everywhere. Now, when they first arrived, like I said, they were popping up all over the place. The first sightings in the US was 1988, and the first sightings on our coast, on the East Coast, was the early 90s, and it's exactly when is not clear. This crab came over clinging or in the bilge of cargo ships and other ships, and when they would pump out the bilge, these little crabs got released all up and down the shoreline. Okay? Now you look at this crab and you say, well, what makes this invasive? It's just a little tiny crab. The bigger crabs can eat it. It's really very simple. Imagine if you left your house and when you came back, people had moved into your house. They're smaller than you, but there's 10 times as many as you. These crabs will produce 50,000 eggs. 3 to 5 times a year, 3 to 4 times a year, they will lay up to 50,000 eggs. That's a lot more eggs than other crabs produce. So there are a lot more of these. So if you came into your house and there were people living in your house, they were eating your food, they're sleeping on your bed, they're playing your video games and watching your TV, you're not going to have any place to live. You're not going to have food. You're not going to have a place to sleep. You could throw 5 of them out the window, and there's going to be 10 more taking their place. So that's what happened with these little crabs. They took over everything, all right? They forced out the crabs that were living in the area, which for our rocky shore was primarily the green crab. All right, now, crabs are pretty spectacular. Even though this is an invasive species, there are some amazing things about crabs. And the first thing is the exoskeleton, okay? Now, I'm using some big words. We're going to be putting vocabulary lists next to the videos on our website. You'll be able to see all of these videos. There'll be a list of the vocabulary words that we use in the video. So go over to our website, meigspointnaturecenter.org, and you'll find all of the big words that I'm using. But an exoskeleton, just an external skeleton. So we have bones inside our body. Their structure, their strength and rigidity is outside of their body. So their skeleton is basically outside their body. Pretty cool, right? It's kind of like Iron Man. All right, if you think of Iron Man's armor, it's all outside his body and it allows him to move and do all kinds of spectacular things. The crab's skeleton is outside of its body. The really cool thing about them is they can regenerate their lost limbs. Iron Man can't do that. But if they lost a leg or a claw, they could grow a new one. Now, crabs are supposed to have 8 legs and 2 claws. Sometimes you find them and they don't have all their legs. So if you look at this one, it's got, let's see, 4 legs on that side, and does it have 4 legs? 1, 2, yes, it has. So this crab has all of its legs. I've grabbed another one in the basket here. This one is missing a claw, and it just pinched me. So it's missing a claw, and it only has 3 legs on this side, but so it's missing a claw and a leg. Now, exoskeletons don't grow, just like Iron Man armor doesn't grow with the crab. If you got a suit of Iron Man armor, so imagine you've got your suit of Iron Man armor on, that's all great, but most of you guys are growing. You're going to get bigger. The Iron Man armor isn't getting bigger with you. So you're going to have to take off that armor and get a bigger suit. The way the crab does it is it sheds, it molts its exoskeleton, it opens up the back of its shell, slides its legs and its claws out. Now its body is soft, it can grow bigger, and then the skin hardens into armor. The skin looks just the same as the exoskeleton, same color and shape and everything, but when it's soft, it's able to grow larger. While it's soft, it can regrow those missing limbs. So the claw and the leg for this crab will be able to grow back while this crab is soft. Now, if you think about it, this crab has a nice suit of armor. There aren't a lot of things that would be able to eat it. That's good protection for it, right? But if you're soft, that means, number one, you're not going to be able to eat, because if you tried to pinch something, your claws are soft, they would just bend around whatever it is they're trying to eat. Also, lots of things would be able to eat you, because now you don't have any armor. So when a crab is soft, it's going to go off and find a place to hide. It will be under a rock usually. It'll stay there until its skin hardens back into armor. For a small crab like that, it's only a matter of hours or maybe a day. For a larger crab, it could take a couple of days. And for something big like our lobster, it could be, 3 or 4 days. So depending on the size is how fast they can harden back into that armor. Now, this little guy keeps on pinching me. That's okay. It doesn't hurt that bad. If you look at its legs, you can see the stripes on the legs. That's an easy way to identify the Asian shore crabs. Most of our other crabs, none of our other crabs that are native to Connecticut have all of those stripes on them. All right, finally let go. Now, another really special thing about crabs, I'm going to switch them again. Their eyes are on stalks. So they can extend their eye out past their exoskeleton. The exoskeleton is not flexible. But imagine if you could only look straight ahead. If your eye was set back into your head, you wouldn't be able to see out. So we're going to say that my hat is like the exoskeleton of this crab. It limits what I can see. I can't see all what's going on up here. Their eye is on a stalk. They can extend their eye out past the exoskeleton and look, and they'd be able to see what's going on up over here because their eye can come out. Then if they're threatened, they can bring their eye back in, and it's protected by the exoskeleton. So pretty cool what these crabs are able to do. Okay, now I mentioned that they produce 50,000 eggs at a time, up to 50,000, that's the max, and they will do that 3 or 4 times a year. When a crab hatches out of its egg, it is planktonic. So there's another big word for you. Planktonic means that it's maybe a little bigger. You could see it with a magnifying glass, but usually you need a microscope to see them. They're little tiny creatures. They're swimming around in the water. So they start out, they're swimming almost like a fish. They look kind of like a shrimp swimming through the water. Then as they get older, they molt their exoskeleton. It changes their shape a little bit until eventually they're landing on the bottom and walking around and not swimming any longer. Okay? So really another cool thing that they can do is they can change their shape as well. Okay. You want to do some questions? We have an assistant over here that's going to tell me what you guys have been asking, because I'm not seeing a lot of questions right now.
How can you tell the difference between male and female crabs?
How can you tell the boys from the girls? Very good question. So when they're planktonic, they have a tail that swims around. As they get older, that tail curls around and becomes part of their body. If you look at the bottom, his tail is very narrow. The girls have a wide tail, takes almost the entire belly. The boys, the tail is very narrow. The girls need that wide tail because that's where they keep their eggs. Until the eggs are ready to hatch, that tail will get bulge bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the eggs will hatch out from that point. Any other questions?
Ava wants to know, what do they eat?
Ava, good question. What do they eat? They eat everything. Okay? Now, they're living in the water, so they're going to eat things that they find in the water, but if something washes up on shore, sometimes they'll come up just where the waves are breaking, and you'll see them in the air a little bit. But they eat lots of dead fish and things that have died and ended up in their habitat, which is mostly rocky shore. And they'll also eat seaweed or algae. So if you think how many fish there are in Long Island Sound and how many of those fish die, the crab is doing us a big favor because it's cleaning up all those dead fish that would be washing up on our beaches. They eat them before they even wash up. Any other good questions? How long do they live? I see that one. That's a good question. And we're not really sure how long the Asian shore crabs live. The longest lived crabs, which are mostly the hermit crabs because people have kept them as pets, are about 30 years. Most crabs live between 3 to 5 years. So I'm going to say that because this is a small crab, it's probably in that 5-year range. Do they eat their eggs? They do not eat their own eggs, but they will eat other eggs that are out there. If a fish lays their eggs or a horseshoe crab, they'll go and eat those eggs as well. What are their predators? So even though they're an invasive species and they're forcing out other crabs, bigger crabs will eat them. There are lots of shorebirds that like to eat them. And if they get out away from their habitat where they're exposed and they don't have the rocks that they can duck in and hide behind, then there are lots of fish that will eat them. The wading birds will actually wade around and poke under the rocks and try and get them, so they stay in that rocky area where they can duck under the rocks for cover. What other questions do we have?
How would a crab lose a claw?
How would a crab lose a claw? So we see that crab is missing a claw. A lot of times we do find them that are missing claws. That could be that they're fighting with each other territorially and rip each other's claws off. Or a predator tried to eat them and the predator got away with a leg or a claw but didn't eat the entire crab.
Do they swim? Or how fast do they swim?
They're very slow swimmers. They're not very fast swimmers. And once they're on the ground, they can get off the ground a little bit off the bottom, but they're not good swimmers at that time. So as a plankton, they're just going with the current.
So Jennifer asked, are any crabs endangered or suffering from low numbers?
Any crabs endangered? I don't know of any endangered crabs right now. The blue crabs, their populations go up and down, and fishermen sometimes tell me that they're having bad years for blue crabs. But lately, we've been having a lot of good years for the blue crabs. So I think the crabs are doing pretty well for the most part. What other things do we have here?
Do all the eggs survive?
No, not all their eggs survive. Now, as eggs, there are lots of things that eat them. When they're planktonic floating in the water, there are lots of things that eat them. When they're much smaller crabs, there are lots of things that eat them. So it does take quite a bit of time for them to get larger. Over that first year of their lives, there are lots of things that are going to eat them. So you're not going to see all of them survive.
Maybe how big do they get?
This is one of our smaller crabs. This is a good size for a female. The females don't get as large. The males can get bigger, up to 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. But they're not a very large crab at all. Somebody's asking again, what kind of crab? This is the Asian shore crab. So again, it is an invasive species. It's not one that you're typically going to find or that you would naturally find in Connecticut.
Linda asked, which crabs do people eat?
Which crabs do people eat? For the most part in Connecticut, people prefer blue crabs. But I know that there are people that eat the Asian shore crabs, green crabs, all the different crabs. I've been told that they all taste pretty much the same. It's just the amount of meat that you get off of them. So the blue crab is bigger, has more meat, and that's why people really like to eat them. How many crabs in our tank? I've never counted them. It's a really good question, but I can't tell you. We're always adding crabs in here. There are other animals that eat the crabs, so we have to keep on, we do feed some of our animals the Asian shore crabs because they're really easy to get. So I can't really tell you how many are in there. I see someone's asking how Connecticut is trying to control the Asian shore crabs. Unfortunately, with this crab, there's not a lot of controls that we can do. We have had a population decline here at Hammonasset, and some biologists were looking at that, and they think it's because we're bringing school groups out and collecting them and counting them, and we're also bringing them back and feeding them to other things. So we may have artificially reduced the population in this area, but that's still something that is being investigated. When did they invade Connecticut? That would have been 96, 97 were the very first sightings in Connecticut, and then they reached Hammonasset a couple of years after that. So since about 98, 99, they've been here at Hammonasset. Why do crabs walk sideways? I love that question. And that has to do with the anatomy of a crab. So let me grab this one again. If you notice, most animals, their legs are under their body, pointing down, right? With the crab, the legs are pointing out to the sides of their body, okay? And you say, so why do they need their legs out the sides? That allows them to get lower to the ground so they can get under those rocks. Even though they have an exoskeleton that helps protect them, because their legs are really low to the ground, they can duck under rocks and it helps them hide. But that's also why they move sideways, because of the orientation of their legs sticking out the sides of their bodies. So, excellent question. All right. I want to thank you guys again for tuning in. Keep the likes coming. Keep passing this page on to your friends. We really want to keep this growing while everyone's in quarantine. And if this keeps getting bigger, we may keep going after the quarantine's over. You may see these little videos in your classrooms. We're opening up teacher resources so people can use these videos however they would like as far as education. Again, I want to remind people that the Meigs Point Nature Center is a Connecticut Department of Energy Environmental Protection facility. So reach out and let them know how much you're enjoying this education that's happening here. We are supported by our Friends group. The Friends of Hammonasset are making sure that all of our animals stay fed while the building is closed. Normally we'd be getting donations from the visitors, and that's what we use to feed the animals. So it's really fantastic that we have a group of people that care so much about the education that we do here that they want to keep it going even though now the building is closed. Now I'm going to remind everybody, keep your social distances, keep washing your hands. It's not an insult to say hello to people from a distance and not give them a shake of the hand or a quick hug. Those are things that we can't be doing right now. So wash your hands, keep your social distance, and by all means, look out for one another. Check with your friends. Make sure everybody has everything that they need, because just like all these animals are connected in the food web, we're part of that, and we're part of each other's ecosystems. We need to make sure that we stay connected with people, even if we're in quarantine. So you can still stay connected and be in quarantine. So thank you all for tuning in. Remember, tomorrow, 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock, we'll be doing this again. And then 2 o'clock, you'll see another presentation tomorrow. I'll see you then.